Welcome back to Temple Bound. In today's episode, we explore the question, what happens when things don't go to plan? Sarah Bingham, a member of the church, was married in the temple and had all the hopes and expectations of an eternal marriage, only to find herself divorced years later. We're going to share with you her story of how she was able to reconcile that and what her journey was like when things don't go as expected, even when she went to the house of the Lord. It's a tender episode that I'm excited to share with you. Enjoy the show. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yeah, super excited.
Yeah, I love your story because it's one that needs to be told. I think, when it comes to temple marriage in particular, there's an expectation of perfection to some degree, don't you think?
Yes.
So why don't you share a little bit of your story?
Oh man, where's the best place to start? So when I was young, I was 8 years old when I started writing in my journal to my future husband because I knew there was one for me.
Yeah.
And through the years, even as I dated other boys, men as I grew up and everything, I would ask, I'd start dating them for a little bit and then I would pray to God and I'd be like, is this the one for me? And he would give me the comment you could make it work and this is a good guy. It just takes a good guy and a good girl. And it was very loose. And I was like, nope, I want a yes. I want the one that you made for me.
Yeah.
And so anyways, through the years, I kept getting no, kept getting yes, kept getting maybe, not yes, but
could
maybes,
be, yeah.
Could be's, yes. So anyways, I was selling Kirby vacuums and I knocked on the door of this gentleman and I don't even know how it happened. I walked in and he was getting something so I could get contact for him for my boss or something. He's like, oh, we bought one of those Kirby vacuums and, Anyways, so I noticed the temple pictures on his wall of his family and stuff. I was like, oh, you're LDS? And he's like, yes, I am. And I was like, that's cool, me too. He's like, awesome, want to go on a date? I was like, what?
Wow, that's he
was bold.
So who was selling who at one point? I mean, that's amazing.
So anyways, a couple days later, needless to say, we connected. And within a couple of weeks, we knew I actually got the yes. We had prayed about it.
You had a strong yes.
I got the yes. So years in the beginning, it was amazing. He was so spiritual that I remember one night where I was having a lot of pain in my abdomen and he prayed over me and come to find out he had prayed that God would give him the pain and take it away from me. And that's how it went. And I was like, whoa, spiritual master. That's what I wanted. I wanted a man that loved God as much as I did.
Yes.
And
which was something that you had a natural inclination. This was a spiritual gift that you always had, was this love of God. And so when you found this, there was no doubting that God was saying, this is the man for you.
Yes. There was when I say there was multiple miracles, we just won't even get into how many. It was undeniable.
Yes, you knew, the way you knew the church was true, or the way you knew the sky was blue. This was the man for you.
I knew that Heavenly Father was my father. That's been a root in my life since very, very young. I had interactions with God, and I actually went to him more than my own dad.
So it's an amazing thing because, you have this knowledge, and then you're married for how many years before you guys get divorced?
We ended up being together for about 8 years before the divorce was finalized.
Yeah, and I think, definitely there's a lot of story between this and there, but I think for the sake of this show, things go to divorce.
Yep.
And that, what was that like for you when you had that knowledge that he was the one for you? How did you reconcile that previous understanding with this thing that didn't work out?
So towards the end of the marriage, my ex would stay up late with the baby and give him the last bottle, and then I would be up at the 4 or 5 o'clock feeding. Well, while the baby slept, I would be reading scriptures or a conference talk or whatever, just kind of dedicating that time to the Lord, and I was getting really frustrated because things were shredding so fastly, and I was so surprised. This was my yes guy, I didn't understand. And I told God that I had always wanted to be a missionary, and there was so many things I wanted to accomplish and do, and God was like, what do you think you're doing for me? And I had the opportunity to be that missionary in my home at that time, even though it feels insignificant. But so I was frustrated, but I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do it because I know that the church is true. I know the doctrine is true. And so I want to stay faithful. And anyways, so divorce hit, and I was just so angry. I was almost spiritually a teenager shaking my fist at God. Like, I was like, you took me through this whole road, and if you already know what's going to happen, then you already knew this was going to happen. I don't understand why you would tell me yes. Like, I was so mad, and I fell away for a while. Not from God, just from the disciplines of
activity.
Religion. Yes.
Yeah.
So I wasn't active at the time. And through the years, I did things very intentionally. I knew I needed to heal. And so, for example, one of the things that I would do was when I would hike, I love trail running and I love like things like that. And so when I would hike, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie called The Shack, but if you haven't, I highly recommend it. It basically walks you through the forgiveness process.
Okay.
And so I would go on this hike and I would out loud say, Lord, that I dedicate every step on this hike to the energy of forgiveness and to trusting you with your plan. And so it was crazy because one time I had already moved back to Arizona because I was in Utah at the time. And I had moved back to Arizona to be with my kids because the judge ruled that I couldn't relocate them. And it was still really, really rough interaction at the time. And I was working to take him back to court. And I just remember God telling me, no, you're not taking him to court. Things are the way I need them to be, type of thing. And I was so devastated. And I got up through the hike. I said all the forgiveness stuff. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to trust you. I'm not supposed to take him to court. I'm just going to trust you. And I got to the top of that hill and back to my vehicle. And there was a text message from my ex that said, like, sorry, or some type of forgiveness thing about what had happened, and like, we need to learn to work together. I'm sorry, like, da-da-da-da.
This is a big deal.
Huge.
Like, this is a huge deal because during the fallout, things are being broken. And, I appreciate the sincerity and the intentionality that you approached the marriage in the first place. You saw the temple in the room when you were selling the vacuum and you were sealed in the temple. And, as we know, President Nelson says that the highest and most important privilege of mortality is to enter into a covenant relationship with God and Jesus Christ. And it feels like, we're promising it forever. We're promising eternity to each other.
Yeah. Giving
and so I can only imagine, when that ends, how much hurt there is and how hard it is to connect over that. So it's powerful to me that even during this time where, like you said, you weren't doing things from a religious perspective, but you were very spiritual still and you were praying in the hike, that in that moment, the Lord softened his heart to text you. And so what was that like for you to receive that text?
I just started crying. Like, it had been so many years that we had fought and things were just so ugly. And so to receive that was like the biggest answer to prayer I could have gotten. That was like the step, like, just keep trusting me, trust me, trust me.
Like a miracle.
Yeah.
I mean, and so I love this idea. Just as a side note, I'm very fascinated by the parallels between temples and mountains. How even during this time when you weren't going to the physical building temple of the Lord, you were still talking to the Lord in his earthly temples, these natural areas where you could go be close to your Father.
Yes, I do believe that the temple is really important. I had an experience while I was in the temple one time because I was kind of frustrated. I kind of felt like, Lord, I'm closer to you on a mountaintop than I am coming here. I don't understand.
Oh, that's right. You were telling me before we hit record that when you first started going to the temple, you were so excited to go. And when you went, you're like, I feel closer to you in the actual mountains than I do here. Yeah.
Yes. And so I asked the Lord, I'm like, why do we have to come here? Like, why can't I be out in the trees and on the mountains? And he said, well, that's not fair. I go to your house. Why can't you come to mine?
Oh, that's nice. So he was in that way communicating to you, this is my house.
Yes. Come spend time with me where I am. Don't make me always come to you.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's amazing too how the Lord can't force us to do those things, but he wants us there. Like he's just wanting us, like any parent would be, to have us come visit and spend time. Not just because he wants to be close to us, because like you said, he can come to us, but there's something about the effort of going to him that makes our hearts open to receive what he can give us.
It shows him that we're willing and that we're hungry. Curiosity and hunger. I feel like there are a couple of things that are really missing out of this world anymore.
Yeah. And so you're in this place, going back to your story, where you have been devastated around these things.
I actually really love that you touched on agency, because that's one thing that I really learned through this marriage is as I was healing and asking God, like, why? And he says, agency. And
why didn't it work out, you're saying? Like, why didn't the temple work out for us if it's supposed to be forever? And his answer was agency?
Yes. I feel like I learned through this marriage that though promises can be made or commitments or, whatever, that we still have our agency. And that really was proven in each of our aspects. My ex choosing the choices that he made. And I honestly had warned him during this time, like, hey, the choices that you're making could cause our family. Like, are you willing to risk our family?
Yeah.
And the heed wasn't there. And so as he used his agency, I used mine as well.
Right.
And that I had to set some boundaries for myself that would, not make me go all the way under. I don't know how to better say that.
Right. You had to choose your agency in order for survival and
I had to get
protection.
healthy. I had to, yeah. And so I really love that. And that's a huge thing. Like, when we judge and force and push and try to control, that loses the essence of God. Like, agency is God. And so I think that's one thing that helped me heal too, is I was like, okay, he can be a human and I can be a human.
And so it seems like that's how, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's how you reconciled this thing about, hey, we're doing the right thing the right way. We're getting married in the temple. We're sealing our hearts to each other and to Christ, but it didn't work out. Yeah. And for many, I have a very close friend of mine who's left the church who he told me, I just told him, like, when we got close enough, why did you leave? And he goes, I did exactly what I was supposed to do and it didn't work. I checked the boxes. I wasn't just a good kid. I was the best kid. I served a mission. I was the AP. I found this wonderful girl from a great family. And then we get divorced. He's like, I can't make sense of it. And so I think there's many people listening who can relate to that feeling of confusion of, hey, I'm doing the right thing. Why does this happen? And sometimes it's divorce, but other times it can be sickness. It can be trials and those types of elements.
It's the brother, the prodigal son brother. That's what I learned. I felt like the prodigal son's brother.
How so?
The prodigal son's brother sat outside while his brother was celebrating with his father because he felt, I did everything right. Why am I not celebrated?
Like you're left out of blessings.
But why does everybody get all this stuff? Because I watched my ex grow into his family. He got remarried very quickly after our divorce. He is still married to that woman. He has the kids. He got the retirement money. He got it all. What about me?
Yeah, what happens to you? And in your case, you're making decisions in order to protect yourself and stay healthy.
Yes.
And you feel like you're sitting on the porch watching everyone else celebrate and have fun.
Yeah, and my father, my heavenly father, celebrating with him and rejoicing with him and glad he came back and, all the things. So I call it the prodigal son's brother syndrome.
How long did that take you in general? Like from the beginning, like since the time of the divorce, the time where you got clear, where would you say, how long of a period of time was that for you?
To be honest with you, I still deal. I was listening to the book called The Body Keeps Score, and I
love that book, by the way.
It's amazing. I was driving down the road, listening to it 1 minute, fascinated because I love psychology. Next thing I know, I am blubbering down the road. I can't tell you what triggered it. I don't know, but I was just like, I'm so broken. Like, I don't even know if I can ever heal because I still have episodes of nightmares, or I call it reels. Like, just this one thing will hook into my brain and just spin a million times, and it throws me into like adrenaline and like frustration and just, I call it cloudy days.
Wow. Thank you for being so authentic, by the way, Sarah. I think people listening really relate to that because
a lot of people deal with it, but they won't talk about it.
No. So why are you so confident in being able to talk about it?
Because I feel the blessings of the Lord because I've worked to heal. The Lord has given me so many things. So, for example, there's a story. I was with my new husband already. It's a blended family. He brought 4, I brought 3 into the marriage, and he is the one. He makes me so happy, and he was the one I've been waiting for. But that doesn't come with no struggles. As we've blended the family, the kids have worked to work together and love together and be together. And my 2 youngest, they were probably like 5 and 6 at the time, and they come running up to me.
Sure.
And one of them says, "Mom, you need to spank him. He was being mean to me," and was like so mad. And I was in this moment of my life, I was just frustrated out back anyway, right? So it just caught me in the moment. But I was like, "Oh yeah? Well, would that make you happy?"
Yeah.
And he was like, "Yeah." And I was like, what the heck? And I just spanked him and I spanked the other one. I was like, now everyone can be happy. Like, why do you have to be mean to each other? Why can't you just love each other? And in that moment, I heard God telling me the same thing. You feel betrayed, you feel hurt, and you want me to hurt him. But I love him. And he's broken too. Like,
he needs me as much as you need me.
Exactly.
You know what? You kind of just got right to this really cool reveal, is that you end up getting remarried.
Yeah.
So if I can summarize the journey, marriage, hopes of perfection, or at least happily ever after, and then it doesn't work out.
Yep.
Then there's this huge confusion and separation from at least activity in the church, but questioning God as to why this happened. And then you realize that agency plays into this.
Yeah.
And then you start working on forgiveness. And through that forgiveness, the Savior's atonement plays in. He touches his heart. He reaches out to you and you start reconnecting. So let's go back to that story of like, how does it go from that to being married again? And like, cause like there was a reactivation involved.
Yeah.
Cause
that I attribute to my current husband. I don't know that I would be active without him.
What was life right before you met him? What was like right before you met him? What was life like for you?
It was openness. I had fallen from the church. I had, shifted my life. I joined the military and I was in Utah at the base and I was looking to relocate my kids. And I had just gotten started boyfriend, girlfriend with my boyfriend before my current husband.
There's a guy you're dating. Yeah.
Yes. And anyway, so my husband and I connected off of Facebook. Our birthdays are like 2 days apart. And so he got notified and he was like, hey, I saw that you've been divorced. Can I ask you what the process was like? And we started talking.
Because he was going through a similar process.
So there was like this fire that started between us. In our conversation alone, we hadn't seen each other in 15, 20 years.
Because, history here the audience doesn't know is that you knew each other as primary children.
Yes. Our moms were in the stake primary presidency together as we were kids. And I would go over to his house and play all the time. We were both raised in Idaho. And I moved to Arizona when I was about 10 years old. And so, so we re-sparked, and all of a sudden there's like this fire going between us. That's the best way I know how to describe it. It was like I just wanted to talk to him all the time. We talked about similar things, and like we felt really similar because of what we had been through with our spouses.
Ex-spouses.
Yeah. She wasn't an ex per se, but they were on that road. He was trying to decide if that's what he wanted to do. I was like, hey, I just got with this guy and I don't know what this fire is, but you need to figure out what you're doing with your wife and I'm going to be doing my thing. I need you to stop talking to me because I can't, I don't know what the fire is, but it needs to stop. And so a year went by. And it was just about to the date where I had went to court to see if I could relocate my kids. And things were falling apart. My current boyfriend, I was breaking up with him because he got orders to move to England. And I was like, I'm not going there.
Yeah.
And so everything was just like falling apart around me. And apparently it was for him too. He had just told his wife that he was ready for a divorce and that they were done and they were working on separating and all this stuff. And
they were married in the temple as well.
Oh yes, absolutely. And he too had been years of trying to figure out what the heck? I thought I was supposed to keep at this because temple is forever. So how deep do you go? How to the darks do you go with a person before you put the boundaries on and go, I don't want to go down that road. I'm done.
And you related to that because eventually their marriage ends.
Yep.
And then you're there together. So
yep.
So once that marriage ended and gratefully you reconnect after that marriage is over. So then what happened?
So we got together and he basically told me hey, I want you to be mine forever. So you better figure it out.
Because he's active at the church at the time.
Yes, at the time. And so he just told me, he was like, I know that I want to be with you together forever. And so I want you to try to come towards going to church and getting your temple recommend, let's go, basically. And so I did. And honestly, probably the first several months of going back to church, I cried every Sunday.
Why?
It was just hard. It was hard to hear some of the things. It was healing, honestly. I remember sitting in sacrament just crying for a reason I didn't even know. And this image came to my mind of like body and soul coming back together almost.
Okay, so
like,
there was some tender reuniting of these
healing.
things and healing.
Yeah.
And maybe some restimulation, I don't know, of like last time you had been there was during that time of difficulty with your previous spouse. So I can see a lot of things happening for you.
Trusting to be spiritual again, trusting that the next thing that God would ask me to do wouldn't lead me down a road of like heartache and hard things. Because sometimes God doesn't ask easy things of us. It's not as easy as go take a meal to this person, go minister or go da-da-da-da. It's hard things he asks. And that's scary to retrust. I was like, I don't want to trust you right now. Like, you asked me to do a really hard thing. What are you going to ask me to do next,
I understand.
And he said, Sarah, where is my servant that when I say jump, she says how high?
That's amazing. And so you get active again. Yeah. And so what was that like to be sealed a second time?
I feel blessed. I have a patriarchal blessing blurb about my marriage, and it was that. It was amazing.
There was some connection there that felt like in the end there was some plan to this chaotic experience.
Absolutely. God has so much beautiful plans, and it's all taken care of, because even when you go through divorce, for me, I was like, what about my kids? Like, what about covenants?
Oh, yeah.
What about like, are they going to be sealed to me and my current husband, or what if they're not? Or like, just so many questions about things like that. And I'm very much a person that's like, God will sort it out, and I kind of trust that, and we don't know in the moment. God has a picture this big, and we have one this big,
Sure.
And so he'll sort it.
Okay.
He'll sort it.
So looking back on this whole journey from beginning to end, because like you said, you're in this place of imperfect perfection now where you've been married now for how many years?
Yeah, almost 5.
5 years. Yeah. You're super in love with your husband. It's a perfect imperfect situation again where like you're two imperfect people. There's still challenges, but it's the happiness that you'd always wanted.
Yeah, absolutely.
What would you say to somebody who's maybe where you were right after a divorce? What would you want them to know? Especially a temple wedding,
absolutely.
marriage that ended up in divorce.
That there's hope and a plan. You have to trust that there's a plan, and be clear about what you want. I feel like God turns it back on us more than we think. Like the brother of Jared, he was like, well, how are you going to light the boats? He kind of left it to him. And you really got to work to create what you want. We are God's in the making. He wants to give us everything he has, including creation power. And I feel like, so many people limit that to having babies, but creation is everything. Creation is everything.
It's interesting to think about the Lord, who has the ultimate creative power. And yes, he created spiritual offspring, but he also created the planets, and he created the trees and the sky and all these elements.
The laws
and we are the literal gravity. We are the literal spiritual descendants. We have the DNA.
Yes.
So when you say creation is everything, I think there's something empowering for me to hear. And I hope people who are hearing who relate to you can feel this is that we have the power to create.
Yes.
And the Lord is always going to respect our agency in that process, just like he has to respect others. And he'll inspire us to do things that don't always, like we think of things as like linear, cause and effect. I do a good thing, I get blessed.
Yeah.
Sometimes those things he wants us to do are the right things. And unfortunately, agency can't be removed, and it results in some painful circumstances.
I remember when I was selling Kirby vacuums, I actually went through this stint where I pretended every day was my last, and I lived expecting miracles.
Wow.
And I feel like there's a power that comes, though we need to go to God with gratitude and humility, we need not forget that we are his child and we have power. And when we are stepping in the footprints of God and moving in life, we can expect that he'll have our back. When we are working to create holiness and light, he will make up the difference.
I love that. There's this quote from Elder Renland that we pulled up before we started talking that I think is just so powerful. Through the power of Jesus Christ, what is broken can be mended. What is old can become new.
Oh, that's so perfect, because though life hasn't been perfect, I would like to say that the ending of the story is not only did I get my current husband, and I'm so happy, but the relationship with my ex has healed so much to the point where it's give and take.
Tell me about that. Tell me about that, because that's surprising.
Yeah, the 4 children that my husband brought to the marriage have actually stayed the night at my ex's house with the other 3 because they wanted to hang out.
So there's so much connection and support and love that like co-parenting
Yes.
that like you've now developed a very friendly relationship with the co-parent.
Yes, it literally can take a 180. Like all this was happening while I was Relief Society president, and it was crazy, but the small steps that it took as we've shifted, and is it perfect? No, but it is amazing. Like we serve each other, we talk, we've actually sat down over food together so we could discuss different topics like as couples, and it's pretty cool.
Oh my word. When you were first divorced, could you ever have imagined that to be possible?
Never, ever in my life.
Amazing.
Never.
This reminds me of another quote that we discussed before we hit record from Sister Kristen M. Lee, who I have just the greatest admiration of. She says, his healing can come to you in your time and in his way as you trust him.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. It's hard. It's so hard in the moments to trust it sometimes. I actually ended up getting a tattoo right here on my wrist of the word trust so that I could look at it often and remind myself, like, trust him. Trust. I feel like it's a hard thing for me and my husband. And so we got matching tattoos, but we're learning to rely on the Lord.
That's wonderful. Well, I can't thank you enough for this wonderful story of hope, of transformation, of miracles, of testimony, of trust. Yeah. I know that right now you have been dedicating your life newly to God as you've been active for years now, and you've been stepping into leadership roles. And one of the cool things that you've been doing most recently is that you're finding creative ways to put the word of God literally on people's backs. Talk to me a little about that.
Yeah, it was actually an idea that I had while I was still married to my ex-husband. And so it's been a long time coming, but just this huge push. God's been like, here, do it, do it, do it. So he just gave me, I was looking around for t-shirts for my little boys one day because I was so sick of the t-shirts. Like, I'll sell my sister for a piece of pizza and like ultimate
stupid,
gamer. Like,
right. All these weird
I don't
shirts.
want those labels. I want something that matters. And so I had this idea of a t-shirt with a whale on it and a man kneeling inside of it and it saying, don't become whale bait. And it just cracked me up. And it's the story of Jonah. The scriptures go on the sleeve of reference. And so as you wear these t-shirts, my hope and dream, and I feel like what God's putting onto my heart is we need to talk about God more. We need to know the stories. We need to remember the miracles because we're going to need that remembering as crazy things happen in our lives. Like, oh, you know what? He saved Esther as she saved her people. And even though Jonah fought it for a while, like I did for a while, he still got to serve. And those people of Nineveh repented and they changed their ways, the whole town. And Benaiah, like there's some that I hadn't even heard of till I started doing this. Benaiah is a man that chased a lion into a pit on a snowy day and killed it and became a king's guard to King David.
Interesting. So you're finding popular and lesser known stories.
Yes.
And you're illustrating them in a fun way to where it sends a message that matters, that reminds people of the Lord.
And conversation starters, someone who doesn't study the Bible, because I also have Book of Mormon ones, and I would love to make a parable line and a Doctrine and Covenants line or a General Conference quote line. It would be so fun, but people who don't believe as we do or that don't know the story, they're going to ask you, what does that mean? What is that about? And then you get the opportunity. I call them Mishmo Creations, missionary moments.
Oh, Mishmo is the name of the company?
Doing business as, yes.
Doing business as. Well, I am so excited. We'll have links to all of those store shirts in the show notes. And I can't thank you enough for being on the show. My final question is always the same one for everybody.
Okay.
Right now, this is one part temple, one part connecting to Christ through temple, but it's a one part family history. We're recording this for your descendants. The most important people listening to this show will be your kids and your grandkids and your great grandkids and so on. What would you want them to know about the temple?
The temple is the highest frequency that you can attain on this earth. And the more time you spend there, the higher you become. And that would lead us to the city of Enoch, where we can all live in the highest frequency possible. And the more you can get around it, the better.
Sarah, thank you. I sure appreciate you being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Temple Bound. If you enjoyed today's content, please leave a review and share the episode with others so that people who are looking for this information can find it. Thank you again for listening. Until next time.